This is Brian Fritz, and you're watching Network 126. On today's show, we're going to be talking about how millennials are the unluckiest generation in modern history. Yes, you heard that correct. Literally, an entire generation. No, it's not your fault that you're still living with your parents. No, it's not your fault that you can't find a job, that you can't move on with your life, that you can't move forward, that you're not getting married, that you're not buying homes, that you're not having kids, all that stuff. It's not your fault. So, I'm going to be basing today's show on a video that I found on YouTube talking about this very thing. It's just under 12 minutes long, and it's a extremely enlightening, eye-opening, shocking video. And I felt much better, honestly, also after watching it, because it does go over quite a few things that are affecting our generation right now, including the pandemic. It does go into that. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Hold on, let me get the speaker has a delay.
At the time, we thought the Great Recession was a once in a generation, hell, maybe once in a century economic disaster.
As anxious and unsettled as maybe I've ever felt. How am I going to make enough to really feel comfortable, or just to make ends meet at that point?
I just felt really betrayed by the system.
For those of us that graduated into the worst economy since the Great Depression, many of us haven't gotten over it.
Betrayed by the system is a great way of putting it. The system has simply not worked out for our generation in general. There's been so many factors that have affected our generation, but there's literally been a perfect storm in recent history with the 2008 recession. People that still haven't even recovered from 2008, and then we're getting hit by this pandemic shit, and it's destroying lives.
In this dream, this vision of where my life was going to go, and then I had to put it on hold because there weren't jobs out there.
I still haven't recovered from 2008.
See, she hasn't recovered since 2008. I recently had someone try to call me out in the comments trying to say, well, everybody else seems to have recovered since 2008. Why can't you? I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, who are you talking about? And like, second of all, not everybody recovered, including that pretty lady right there. Continuing on now.
While terrible for most everyone, are particularly awful for those just entering the job market.
If you enter the labor market at the wrong time, which this generation did, you're going to have ongoing problems.
Let me just cut it right there. I entered the job market at the wrong time. That was right at the beginning of the quote unquote Great Recession that we had started back in 2007, 2008. Like I said, that this has just been a double whammy for our generation. Starting at the height of a recession, entering the job market at the height of a recession, not being able to get your footing in the economy, and it talks about this. It goes into it.
Right, as some of us millennials were finally getting back on our feet, bam, pandemic.
Oh my God, that's such a great point. I had to stop it again right there. He just reiterated exactly what I'm going through. He said that basically as soon as we're starting to get on our feet, then bam, the pandemic happened. That's like what happened with me. I just got my own place. It may not be the most glamorous place. It may not have insulation or drywall or plumbing or any modern creature comforts like that except electricity. But you know what? It's better than living in my dad's kitchen. and I've been starting to move up in life, and just due to circumstances I wound up in this place, and right away I got that job at Amazon, and I started moving forward in life. I started paying down debt, and I started actually paying my bills on time, and I even managed to buy a new camera to film better YouTube videos with and make more money on AdSense with. But COVID came along and it ruined everything. Ever since COVID came along, this pandemic, the masks became mandatory. If it weren't for the pandemic, if it weren't for COVID coming into this whole 2020 scene, I would have been fine continuing to work at Amazon. I probably would have been driving the forklifts by now. I mean, really, they seemed like they were pretty eager to train me in, like, just every single department that I consented and said yes to. And I was saying yes to all of them. And, I wound up ultimately as a robotics operator, which, you have to go through quite, at least a whole day's worth of training, like in classroom training and, like actually like hands-on training. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was moving forward in life, and this COVID shit ruined it. Like, I was finally starting to move forward and finally starting to feel good about myself, finally starting to feel positive. That's why I've taken this so hard. That's why I've been so depressed, because I was already depressed and miserable enough. I know I'm going off on another tirade right now, but I was already depressed enough. And then, to finally work and claw my way out of that and start moving forward, only for me to get knocked back down flat on my ass again after barely even, not that much time of moving forward. It's incredibly infuriating. So this video kind of touches a little bit more on that too, about millennials' general outlook on their lives and the economy. Let me rewind it a few seconds because it's the delay with this speaker here. It's a weird Bluetooth speaker, but I have it plugged in physically, but I don't know, it's got a weird delay.
Getting back on our feet, bam, pandemic.
I think it's fair to say it couldn't have come at a worse time for them.
For the first time in modern memory, we're having to confront an ugly truth that my generation will be worse off than my parents and grandparents were. Not because of anything we did or didn't do, but simply because we were born in the wrong years.
All right, so let me just pause right there. A lot of the trolls, those trolls, poor fools. Seriously, they don't get it. They're always trying to blame me personally, individually, for all these problems. And it's not my fault. It's not your fault watching this. It's not your neighbor's fault. It's not your girlfriend's fault, your cousin's fault that they're still living at home with their parents, that kind of thing. It's a systemic failure, not an individual failure.
Parents told us what our adult life should be. It just didn't work out.
This is Think Again with me, Andrew Stern, where I take you every step of the way as I dig into compelling, complex, or controversial topics that make us wonder, do we need to think again? Unless you have a private yacht to escape to, this pandemic has been excruciating for just about everyone. It's too early to know which generations will be most injured by this. That'll take years to sort out. But one thing we do know is that the 1-2 punch of the Great Recession, followed by COVID-19 in the span of just 11 years, is an economic challenge different from anything we've seen before. And as fate would have it, the timing is uniquely bad for my age group.
Millennials have lower rates of employment overall. They have lower earnings, lower savings, and then layered on top of that, they have debt, which of course is deeply related to that lower employment and lower earnings that they carry with them over time. And they're carrying all of that into this particular economic crisis.
The ethos of America is upward mobility. The American dream is to build on the promise that each generation builds upon the previous one, and quality of life improves steadily. For as far back as U.S. Census data goes, that's been true. Household wages have risen relative to previous generations. That is, until Gen X handed the baton to us. Across the education spectrum, we're earning less than the previous generation. But why? We're the most diverse, most educated, most productive generation in American history. But from an economic standpoint, we could not have been dealt the worst hand. Twice. And as I learned from the experts, it all has to do with timing.
When a recession happens, the impacts are often uneven. These cohorts who are coming of age during economic downturns, unfortunately experience really strong negative economic impacts. They come out to a very difficult labor market, and it's hard to get a good first job. It may be hard to get a job at all, but if they do get a job, they're likely to get a job that's maybe lower pay and lower quality than the job that they would have gotten had they graduated a bit earlier.
In 2008, 9, or 10, I think most of us were pretty happy to have a lousy first job, just so long as we had one. What I didn't realize at the time, though, is that that first job has major impacts that ripple out across your entire career.
And I'm going to add on that note about those major impacts from your first job. My first two, well, okay, technically, because I did work at Leela's Fine Dining restaurant that showed up on Kitchen Nightmares with Chef Gordon Ramsay. If you want to ask me about that in another video or in the comments, we can do that. But that when I worked at that restaurant, I also simultaneously worked for only a month, but still at Toys R Us while Toys R Us was still a thing, because I was in the end of 2006, because I graduated high school in 2006 and I got that job at Leela's, I believe, in October. And then I got the job at Toys R Us in November in preparation for the holiday season. So I was actually getting paid by Toys R Us, but I was only getting paid $6.75 an hour, which was what minimum wage in California here was at the time. And I was only working part-time because I couldn't work full-time because I worked at Leela's also. And well, that ended up being a waste of time, kind of, sort of. Well, for the most part, I mean, I got an experience, I got to be on TV and stuff, but ultimately I didn't get paid. So, which that's what I was building up to here. I didn't get paid by, if you don't count Toys R Us, since I only worked there for a month, my first two jobs right out of high school, I got burned for, because both of those restaurants ended up going bankrupt and out of business. They both combined ended up owing me over $8,000 when they closed. So talk about setting me up for failure. Talk about those ripple effects.
A lousy first job, just so long as we had one. What I didn't realize at the time, though, is that that first job has major impacts that ripple out across your entire career.
It is true that the trajectory of your economic future and in some ways your life is altered permanently on average. The first job that you get sets you up for the second job, which sets you up for the third job, right? And so where you start in that career trajectory really matters.
I checked in with half a dozen or so of my fellow millennials. Some I knew, some I didn't. And their experiences bore that out across the board.
I either had to prepare myself for like a long stretch of not being able to work when I graduated 2010, or, just trying to scrap for anything possible at that point.
There were no jobs, and I remember being friends with seniors who were getting ready to graduate. They were panicked that they couldn't find jobs. And so they either had to work for free or work in a different industry. And the same thing happens.
Yeah, I know all about working for free. That's essentially what I did at two different jobs. And people wonder why I'm frustrated with life.
To me when I finally finished college in 2010.
The legal market just completely blew up. It went from, jobs everywhere at high pay to there aren't any jobs. Seasoned attorneys don't have work. New attorneys can't get work. And it was just chaos.
That was the first time that I ever remember battling something that sounded like depression or anxiety. I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now and had high blood pressure at the age of 27. I remember the mental and the physical toll that it took was pretty profound.
I'm going to add upon that as well. That's something that I've been saying myself. The mental and emotional toll that these situations put on an individual. I mean, that there's just no words. I'm having trouble finding the words to even describe it.
Gen X, twice as many millennials took.
I remember the mental and the physical toll that it took was pretty profound.
Physical too.
Compared to Gen X, twice as many millennials took on student debt to go to college or grad school. And for those who took on debt, on average, it was 50% more than Gen Xers. It also doesn't help that college was dramatically more expensive for us, about twice as much. For many of us, our starting salaries were lower than what you'd normally expect. Millennials earn 20% less than baby boomers did at the same age. We can't buy a house. We're less able to save for a rainy day. We hesitated to get married or have kids. In 1965, the typical American first married around 22 years of age. By 2017, it was closer to 28. In 1972, the average age of first-time parents was about 24 years old. Now it's 28 and a half. Everything was delayed at best or impossible at worst.
Which is why it took me so long to get out of my dad's kitchen, to get, first of all, to get out of my mom's. That's, during that whole time that I was getting burned for $8,000 in wages from 2 different restaurant jobs. That was me trying to get out of my mom's, trying to, get at least a room or something, start putting away for a first car, maybe go to school. I had different plans and, different outlook back then. And, but people, a lot of times that they don't understand where I'm coming from when it's not that I'm just trying to be negative. It's not that, I'm just trying to, make it seem like I just want everything to fail, or I don't know. It's just, I don't understand what people think sometimes, but like, I don't know. It's just very hard to describe. It's just, there's so many problems within society right now, holding back our generation in general. And it's not even funny. It's not our fault. And I'm getting sick of people trying to blame us for it.
Any day, we hesitated to get married or have kids. In 1965, the typical American first married around 22 years of age, but paid at best or impossible at worst.
They're not making more than their parents. That speaks directly to the so-called American dream, the idea that each generation should do better than the one preceding it. And so if they compare themselves to their parents, which is a very salient comparison, they're going to fall short more frequently than had before been the case.
They've been left in a situation where they're sort of being held responsible as though their actions are what caused the circumstances in which they find themselves, when in fact it was actually decisions that were made at a much higher level.
She made an excellent point, which was something that I was just touching upon earlier myself. It's not our fault. We shouldn't feel that way, and nobody should be trying to make us feel that way or imply that we're at fault individually for all these problems, because we're just not. Like I said, I had different plans back then. When I got out of high school, I was thinking, well, I'm not in the greatest situation here living with my mom, so I'm just going to get a job and work my ass off, get out of here, get a car, go to school or something, get into whatever I can get into, and, get a career, start working, get a better place, eventually buy a home, start a family, all that kind of stuff. But all that went out the window, like that other person was saying earlier about how, that they had certain expectations in life and they just had to put everything on hold. It's not fair,
that were made at a much higher level.
So we got dealt a crappy hand. Our timing was monumentally unlucky, and there was very little we could do about it. For most of us, this completely changed our mindset and outlook for the future.
Individual.
Yeah, see, that's what I was just saying. It totally changed our outlook and mindset for the future. It's damaging, it's traumatizing. You know, when you experience all these things, you can't help but look at the world negatively and pessimistically, and just with an overall dread.
We changed our mindset and outlook for the future.
Individuals like millennials who come of age during economic downturns are more pessimistic about the economy and their economic outlook, but they're also more pessimistic about their future chances of success, the likelihood that they will be happy in their old age, or the likelihood that they will retire comfortably.
Do you feel like this country and our economic policies work for you? Do you feel like you're set up for success in the modern economy in America?
If you were to ask me a couple months ago, I would say fairly yes. But now I don't think so.
Those two events, the relatively close proximity in time between the two, has shaken a lot of confidence that I have in the fundamentals of our system.
I just felt really betrayed by the system, even though I was like complying to what is to be like legitimate in the system.
These feelings of angst and insecurity translates to us taking fewer risks. We're less likely to start a business, more hesitant to buy a house or have kids. The normal things that power the American economy. And it's become all but a pipe dream for so many of us. And that was before COVID landed the second of the 1-2 punch.
Exactly. It was already bad enough before COVID, but I was managing to get my life together, even though, you know, Alabit living in a shed, but hey, it's my own place.
Pipe dream for so many of us. And that was before COVID landed the second of the 1-2 punch.
Nearly a decade later, as many of these folks are getting back onto their feet and getting back onto a career trajectory that maybe they expected to be on 5 years ago, they're getting hit again. And that sort of 1-2 punch, I think, is something that we've never experienced before, and that is likely to have pretty devastating economic impacts for this generation.
The stability that I was like fighting to get, like I did finally get when I turned 30, like the week I turned 30. And when the pandemic happens, for it to stop and be stalled, that is pretty traumatic.
And I'm going to stop her right there. She described finally having her independence at the age of 30. I'm 32. I had my own apartment once. Well, that was like back between 2014 to 2016. And there was a whole bunch of circumstances that led through that, my mother dying and all kinds of stuff. But I did manage to get a job, but then that job moved away, and then I had problems with my car, and then eventually that job ended up just disappearing, basically. I mean, it just like it got dissolved and broken up. People went to different companies. Some equipment stayed here, some equipment went over there to this other location, and it was just a mess. So yeah, this is quite a mess. This is like I said, this is destroying lives.
The stability that I was like fighting to get, like I did finally get when I turned 30, like the week I turned 30. And when the pandemic happens, for it to stop and be stalled, that is pretty traumatic. You know, I don't know where to go from here. It's always been a big punch in the face every couple of years.
Hillary lost.
Yeah, punch in the face every couple of years. Yeah, I just had to stop that again because she's just hitting so close to home with that. You know, like I was saying, I had my own place, and then, I'm 32 now. I'm living in a shed now. At least I'm independent, and I was starting to finally, gain some footing, move forward in life. I was making like $600 every couple weeks, work or no, every week working at Amazon, and yeah, and all that's gone now. It's just, and if it weren't for COVID, I would still be there. Like I said, probably driving the forklifts by now. This is why I can't help but be negative, because I've had such a hard and difficult life for so long. And then, during that whole time, everyone kept like yelling and screaming at me, like be positive, be positive, snap out of that negative, victim mentality mindset. Oh, I hate people. I use those words, victim mentality, by the way, just boils my damn blood, just triggers me deep down to the core. I hate that phrase, especially, the way that most people use it against me, you know. I just can't even anymore sometimes. Like it just deeply enrages me that much, that I was finally starting to move forward. I was starting to finally think like, oh yeah, okay, well maybe these people were onto something, it is starting to work out. Maybe the world isn't so bad after all. And then bam, hello. Now I'm sitting here unemployed, scared about the future, behind on my car payment, behind on everything, just the depressed fucking wreck right now. I am. And it's not even my fault. It's like, what do I do? It's like, how am I supposed to feel about this? This is real shit.
All that is pretty traumatic. I don't know where to go from here. It's always been a big punch in the face every couple of years.
Hillary lost her job and said she's still waiting on unemployment checks. Eric contracted COVID-19, and after 10 days fighting it, recovered, went back to work, and was laid off a couple days later.
This roller coaster keeps going up. When's it going to come down? Is it going to come down? And now it's like, all right, it came down hard.
Brooks is on a one-year contract as a professor for next year. But with steep cuts likely to hit higher education, long-term job security is no guarantee. Robbie was scarred enough from the Great Recession that he chose a completely different area of law to practice, specifically so he could weather a recession.
I still haven't recovered from 2008, and I'm kind of lost of where I'm at now.
When I asked my larger friend group about plans for getting married, buying a house, or having a kid, many of them straight up laughed at me. When I asked about their outlook for the future, almost none of them were outright optimistic. This is partly why Medicare for All, canceling student loan debt, and other big structural changes proposed by politicians like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and AOC resonate with young folks across the country. They're the ones who the system doesn't seem to be working for.
Those who haven't fared well under the existing set of arrangements tend to blame themselves. That's part of the American sort of self-reliance ethic. I think there has been a change in that sensibility and a greater recognition that some of the problems that this generation has been experiencing are not due to individual failings, but rather to systemic ones.
The individuals who experience economic downturns during their impressionable years are more likely to believe that economic success is the result of luck rather than hard work.
The problems are reaching such a level that it's hard to see yourself as the only person who chose your way into a particular situation, because it's the same situation in which you see your friends and your relatives.
And that concludes that video. So we've covered a lot of very hard hitting, very deep personal things here. I don't know what to say. We're in very unprecedented times here. None of us know what's going to happen. Millions of us are scared out of our wits right now. The bills are piling up. The collection letters are, coming in the mail, sort of thing. It's, like, where is this all going to lead? What are people going to do? This can't end well at all. And then with the unemployment benefits, the extra, $600 in federal unemployment benefits for this pandemic ending July 30th. I mean, it's July 8th right now. And with COVID cases skyrocketing in multiple states right now, and then they want to end that right as I stopped working and I'm just starting to try to get on unemployment. It's like such insult to injury, and I'm just, that this is real shit. This is, you're seeing it right here on my face. Like these are real difficult times, and I don't know what to say. Maybe you guys have something to say. Add it down there in the comments section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you personally struggling beyond personal belief? Do you mind sharing it with the audience? I'd love to make videos on this. If you'd like to tell your story, you can dial 1-802-738-0126. And you'll have 3 minutes to tell your story. And if your story is longer than 3 minutes, I mean, there's nothing stopping you. I mean, you're welcome to call back a second time or maybe a third time. I mean, don't call back like 10 times because that's going to be kind of tricky to string all those edit and string all those audio files together. But I mean, share your stories. Seriously, I want to hear it and I want to put it out there. I want to make videos on this because this, we need to be heard. This isn't our fault and we're suffering. Suicides are spiking because of this, because of COVID related job losses and, just general economic insecurity, instability. People not able to pay their rent, not able to pay their bills, losing everything they own, losing their homes, losing their cars, going to the streets. It's ugly. It's terrible. What's happening to humanity? And then the fact that we have all these stupid people, jump in the comment section and stuff, trying to talk all this shit and try to blame me and other people individually. Like I said, adding insult to injury, as if we're not already going through enough as it is already. Like, you really have to, do you really, really have to go out of your way to come up to me, not even knowing me, just to come and basically do the digital equivalent of spitting in my face, and calling me an idiot and telling me that I'm wrong and telling me that I need therapy and that I'm mentally ill and all this, stupid bullshit. It just enrages me to the core. I don't know what to do or say anymore at times. I'm just so incredibly appalled and disgusted by humanity, by the world, by the system, by the government, by just everything. I just hate it all so damn much. I'm just sick of it. I just had it up to here with everything. And, these are feelings that I wake up with every day. It's actually gotten to the point where I dread being awake, because it feels like I'm actually living life, having a better life, at least in my dreams. And, I seem to be happier there. I'm not going through all these struggles that I am here. And it's like when I wake up here, this is the nightmare. And when I go to bed, that's when I actually resume my like real life. That's what it feels like. That's what it's gotten, that's the point that we've reached now. And it's very sad. And it's like life isn't meant to be experienced this way. We're meant to be happy. We're meant to lead happy, healthy, productive lives here on this planet, here on this earth. And yet so many of us are just suffering instead. Instead of thriving, we're struggling just to survive, just to try to make ends meet, try to, to delay the next bill collection, try to make the next creditor go away. It's like, this isn't life. This really isn't. And like I said, that's why so many people are committing suicide right now. There's just been that there was like a year's worth of suicide within like a couple of weeks or something like that. I was reading in an article and a video that I just did about that recently. And I gotta say, I don't blame these people, because there's only so much that a person can take. Everybody has their limit. Everybody has their threshold. You know what I mean? A lot of people, they're just tired of the pain. They're just tired of the suffering. They just want the suffering to stop. And they don't know how else to do it. They've tried everything. They've applied for all the jobs. They tried starting their own businesses. They tried going to college. They tried all these things that society, their parents, and all their friends told them to do. And yet the system has failed them. So many of us, my entire generation. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it at that. What are your thoughts? Let me know about that below in the comments section. At least we can talk about it here. Kind of vent and get things off our chest. I don't know. This is Brian Fritz, and you've been watching Network 126. Rate, comment, subscribe.